Hi, my friends. How are
Hi,
you?
friends. Good. And you all?
Hey João, hey Norah.
Hey, Daniel.
So, guys, before we start, as I have just explained on our previous study, my internet connection is not great today. So I can to hear my friends here in a much more clear way. I need to keep my camera close, but I'm hearing them really, really, really fine. And in this way, they can hear me better as well. We are here for our five study, our fifth study of this amazing book, William Stephen. We're really enjoying everything that we are taking from the book. It's a very um, inspirational book. It's very emotional. And we have loads of interesting things to talk about tonight. Before we start, as always, our friend Nora will bring us some prayer, and then we can get much more calmer and then get more focus and start properly talking about the book. Okay.
All right, friends. Gonna ask this evening, dear Mother Mary, we're asking you for inspiration. That every message tonight that is emitted is sending more peace, more love, more support, fraternity. We ask that with your beautiful maternal arms, you hug all of our brothers and sisters right now that are needing an embrace, that are needing hope, that have lost everything. But love, your love, dear Mother, Divine Mother, is blessed. We ask for that. And as we're studying tonight, we're sending just loads and loads of this love. Let's say a prayer. A Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. And we hold on to you, Mother Mary, with so much hope for all this beautiful planet. Thank you. And with that, we ask permission to begin. So it is.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, dear.
Thank you.
Tonight we're starting chapter 4, which is called On the Road to Joppa. It's a very interesting part of the book. It's worth saying that we're starting to enter a couple of very crucial moments in the book. So it's very important for us to pay attention in those parts because they will lead us and they will have a couple of important parts in the future chapters. So, what is happening now is very important for what will happen in those next chapters. So we are, and the chapter starts exactly this way. We are in Old Jerusalem in a clear morning in the year 35 AD. The chapter begins with two, and they appear to be great friends, Sadak and Saul. They really like each other, and here, for the first time, we have a description of the eminent Saul of Tarsus, exactly that man that the Bible talks about to us. And Emmanuel is the author of the book. Emmanuel describes Saul as a young man around 30 years old of age, on his face full of virility and handsome manliness. His Jewish features stood out particularly in his deep, penetrating eyes, characteristic of indomitable and passionate temperaments, rich in intensity and resolve. That's how he's described. He was dressed in a patrician tunic. He preferred to speak Greek, which he had learned in his hometown in the company of his much loved teachers. It's really important for us to see who this man was because his personality will bring us much things to talk about. Here we have A very interesting conversation between them because Sadak tries to make fun of the changes Saul had been through when Saul stops him to say that he was still in the soul of the law, always desirous of submitting Rome and Athens to their own principles. This is really important because his love for the law will change everything. From this point of the book, they enter in a really important conversation, considering again the whole book. And Sadok saw that Saul had arrived there in a chariot. Then he starts to make fun of him again. He said that that chariot was essential for Saul's visits to a flowered little house on the road to Joppa, and speaking Greek was required for conversations with a true descendant of Issachar born amid the flowers and marble of Corinth. Very interesting. Then Saul asked, "How did you find out about that?" In a huge, Saul got really, really surprised. Sadak said that Saul's sister had told him. And Saul's sister's name was Delilah. This relationship that Saul was having with friends and family is really important for us to pay attention because this scenario will change a lot. Um, Saul was extremely cheerful as he told his friend that he was, in fact, in love with a young girl of his race who combined the gift of uncommon beauty with the highest treasures of the soul. Who is he talking about? Her devotion to home life was one of her holiest female attributes. He said that about 3 months ago, he had gone to a party that a man named Zechariah ben Hannah threw for some friends to celebrate the circumcision of his servant sons. He said, and Saul added here that the host, Zechariah, had emigrated from Corinth after many years of working in Achaia, after having become disheartened due the persecutions of which he had been the victim. We have heard this story. Saul said that he had been received by Zechariah with much generosity. And at that party, he had met a girl named Abigail. This is very nice. He said that she was a tender heart, holder of the most beautiful moral virtues that could possibly adorn a daughter of their people. This is very nice. He said that, in fact, she was ideal, and then he starts describing her. She was intelligent, versed in the law, and above all, sweet and affectionate. Saul said that she had been adopted by the couple as a dear daughter after having suffered bitterly in Corinth, where her father had been murdered and her brother enslaved for life. Again, we've been through this story. And then Saul told Sadok that he was planning to take Abigail to meet his family with his sister Delilah. He had already made a couple of plans. When Saul started talking about his plans with Abigail, Sadok interrupted him to ask about where did he stand regarding his ambitions for the post in the Sanhedrin. Saul explained that he had no complaints because the tribunal had given him very special duties for that time. He said that he had been promised a place of prominence in the administration of their people. Um, he added that soon he would replace Gamaliel. And again, this Gamaliel is a man that the Bible brings us in the book of Acts, and the deliberations of the most important matters, and he would receive a very good income besides the contribution coming to him periodically from Tarsus. His main political ambition was to increase his prestige among the rabbis. Saul asked why Sadoc had gone to Jerusalem, and then we start talking about a very interesting thing here. As the book brings us, Sadoc did not live in Jerusalem. Then Sadoc, started to explain that he had gone there to check out the healing of his uncle, who was healed of his blindness through some mysterious process. Very interesting. Then he asked Saul if he had heard of the man of the way. Sadak went on saying that a man called Stephen, and at this point of the book, we know that Stephen is Jazel, Abigail's brother. So he asked, he started telling that a man called Stephen, supposedly a bearer of supernatural powers in the common folks' opinion, was the one who had restored his uncle's sight to the amazement of many people. And as we were talking about last week, Stephen was working a lot. Saul said that how could a Jew, and he was talking about Sadok's uncle, how could a Jew accept such help? He said that ever since he heard of the men of the way, he was exchanging ideas with Gamaliel about how they should stop those pernicious activities. And here, there's a really interesting point because Saul brings us that Gamaliel opinion was already much more pondered, that he was having another thoughts about those men and that he had another vision. He was not that harsh on them. They finished the conversation with Saul saying that he would do whatever it took to stop those enemies from God. Saul asked on what days Stephen was preaching on that church. And Sadak answered, on the Sabbath. So Saul said that they would go there to check those fools. He added, in case their teachings actually turn out to be innocuous, they would leave them in peace with their crazy talk in the midst of human maladies. Otherwise, they would pay very dearly for their audacity of offending their religious codes in the very metropolis of Judaism. So we see Saul starting those threats. They discussed at length social events, the intrigues of Pharisaism to which they belonged, the successes of the present, and hypes for the future. At this point of the book, I'm going to pass the word to Daniel.
Thanks, João. So in this part, we will see that Zechariah, Abigail, and Ruth are living now in Joppa, uh, and they left Caesarea in Greece, crossing the Mediterranean Sea. It's nearly 40 miles, and they living in this city. I thought it was interesting to bring this information. Nowadays is an old port in Tel Aviv, in one of the oldest cities in the world. So Joppa was really uh, had a really hot uh, commerce at that time. It was so important. Um, then Zechariah, in this whole story, how they started living there, Zechariah was helped by some friends to get there. And first, he was helped by a Roman with an untold name. Probably this name is protected by the author for some reason. And Alexander, who helped him, especially in the, well suc- being a well succeeded merchant, seller of animals and vegetables, and alongside with the efforts of Abigail and Ruth, Zechariah could become financially independent in his own native land. And can you imagine how happy they are at this point? It was so much pain they could ever overcame. They lost their son, and they had a very dangerous travel, and very long travel also. They found Abigail, but they succeeded back to Israel, and there Abigail could recast her beauty. And although she had now a veil of subtle melancholy, so she was she got very sick, as we read in the past chapters, but she could now recast her beauty. But she had uh, this temper of melancholy and all the pain she was through, she had been through. And another friend of Zacharias, back in Achaia, would search for Giseon's whereabouts, and they were always expecting, especially Abigail, expecting this news about Giseo. And the last one they could have is when Giseo was uh, boarding on a ship, still enslaved to Nicopolis, northern of Greece. So next, the author describes Abigail's perspective over Saul and how much should like Giseo to know him. So Saul, as João already presented, is a strong-willed man, young man. He is wise, he's forceful, he's an expert in sacred texts, and he also has this wild temper. He's full of authority, he's rich, he's powerful, and yeah, this is the guy that Abigail is dealing with. So as Saul was riding the horses on his chariot, he was remembering his youth with his friends in this Greek sport, which was the chariot races. And he was imagine we could picture this. He was feeling the wind, remembering his fun with friends, uh, and reaching the house of Zechariah, Ruth, and Abigail. Well, Abigail was there, lost in her reverie, thinking about how much she would love Jesus to know Saul, how much she's in love with Saul, and wondering about uh, where Jesus could be and how he would be doing at that point. When Saul comes in full trot, so he comes very quickly in the house of Zechariah, and Zechariah all happy with that situation he's living. He's well succeeded, and Abigail is um, in love with this, let's say, this successful young man. He's very attractive, and yeah, everything is so fine. Everything is going so good. So he greeted Saul at the house and took him inside and started a conversation with so much satisfaction. And a little later, when Saul is already alone with Abigail, they start to stroll around the house, and Saul notices that she is a bit sad. And when he asks uh, what is the reason, she gave this answer. It's like I found it so a bit amusing. It's like a girly puzzle. She said, "Oh, I don't know, but it's part of the romance." She's all so sweet. And fun apart, Abigail starts to explain. She's not that mysterious with him. She started to explain the reason of all her concerns. That melancholy she was feeling, she was expressing, and is mainly the how much she misses her brother and Jesus, and she starts to talk about Jesus and how good man he is, and the important role she he had in her life after her mom passed away under the Licinius' punishments. Now we see, let's say, a dangerous side of Saul. He reveals jealous of of her brother, and asks, "Do you love him more than me?" What kind of sick question do you make to your girlfriend when she was talking about her brother, how important he is to her life, and how hurt he is, she was for losing contact with him in such a brutal way, like it happened. And he adds that he promises that he'll make use of all means he could to find Jesus, but it's interesting how he never holds back any impulse of controlling Abigail. He loves control. He loves to be powerful. He loves to be, that powerful man over having control over his girlfriend. And he says this sentence a bit sounds a bit harsh, I think. He says, "According to what you say, this man must be a saint." It's quite ironic, quite a harsh, but that's all. And I think so interesting. Abigail is like now a heroine from the romantic novels. She's sweet, she's so fragile. She's full of moral virtues, and she falls in love with this guy that is quite good looking. He's rich and he's powerful. He's this untamed male, so powerful, so forceful. But she discovers that tender heart hidden deep inside. So now reveals something really uh, full of control. He took this decision by all by himself. He says that he prepared clothes, reception, trip, and everything to take Abigail from Joppa to Jerusalem without asking any questions to her. Um, and he just thought all about they get married. And he arranged everything, and he says, "Oh, don't be shy. Well, don't be shy in this context means I won't take no for an answer. He's he's compelling her to accept and to go to leave the house and go to Jerusalem to get married with him. Next, she was shocked, but Saul, being who he is, he just starts to strolling around with her, feeling the breeze, and breathing that pure air, enjoying her company. It's a very powerful attitude of him, but he's still being attractive man to Abigail. So I like to sum up uh, in the end of the part that I read is we have Abigail trapped in this romance. Saul is a powerful, rich, and let's say untamed guy, and Zachariah is really happy and he's loving how things are going. And like the author says, things are going stupendously well in Joppa. So this is the scenario, and I give the word to our friend Nora.
Absolutely beautiful. I was telling friends here, Jean and Daniel, before. Oh my gosh, this is so romantic. Oh, I have to be in that mind frame because it is very romantic. And so, if you allow me, friends, today I
Thank the
will.
Lord, and just thank the Lord we have our married friend here to balance things out.
Yes, thanks, Daniel. Because oh my gosh, it's basically what happens to the end of the chapters. Abigail and Saul are they're just they're exchanging these vows for each other. They're flirting, they're dating, they're just feeling all of this lovey-dovey stuff. But even though Sao has this prestige, right, this aura to what he's saying, when we really break down the dialogue between Sao and Abigail, we can still see that Abigail has that, I want to say, like that love from a woman of God, which I think is very beautiful. So I am not a love coach or a therapist or anything, but my gosh, do we learn so much from here, how they interact with each other, and even ourselves in our relationships, just how to be romantic, you know, with that sense of spirituality, which is always very, very beautiful, especially for us here, right? As we want to be better and just understand more of this. So let's break it down. So what we're gonna do, if we were in a classroom, I would actually be doing like a T chart, and I would put Sal's name on one side, and then we would put Abigail on the other, and we would just be writing stuff because it literally is like this. So, um, I'm not gonna call them red flags, but they're just things to for us to kind of be like, Here's one of the things that Saul says to Abigail. My father spoke to me about the home and its sweetness, and I waited for a woman who could understand me completely. Again, this is on the surface, it's very, very beautiful, but as us that we've been studying more and we come to understand, and we can even see, I'm going to use like for instance Allan Kardec, right, um, and the love that they had, he and did not, okay, how can I say this without coming out, like I said, I'm not a romantic person, but they didn't complete each other, they already were complete, right? So when Allan Kardec was doing the work, etc., it was like his thing. And I think when we have this red flag of Sao kind of saying, "Will you complete me?" I think it speaks for itself that there will be some form of dependency. And again, it's this line between dear friends that I'm trying to kind of like see it from, of course, from an earthly perspective, because there is this romance, but also from that spiritual line. And then he continues saying, I met a woman who beckoned to me, taken by a perilous and mistaken notion of love. Okay, so again, we could see this. Oh wow, well, Saul feels very comfortable with Abigail to talk about his past, but I think that, and even Daniel pointed out, he has those airs of being very, me. So he's probably very used to all of that because of his look. So we know he's not saying it, probably not so humble. And who would bring up a past like that? You're trying to, you're trying to get to know this person so much better. We're gonna look at Abigail, and yet he is talking about this past of his, and he continues, during my youth games, I used to receive declarations of love and marriage and proposals. And again, this is not judging him, but seeing that he's still learning a little bit about how to how to love a woman like Abigail, right? It says here, you're the heart of my mind, the essence of my reasoning, and you will be the guiding hand of my edification throughout life. And again, there is no he does mention God in the next paragraph, but even prior to that, this love that he's thinking about is very rooted in one person, in Abigail, right? He's waiting for her, like, now you complete me, and I had this past of all these women and I said no, but I'm saying yes to you, right? And this is just food for thought about all of this. But now we're going to see Abigail, how she responded to all of this. And I'm going to read this because even for me, I'm like, okay, even if, when I'm in a relationship, I would love to have this way of seeing love. I think Sao is a lot of what we see in society today, a very superficial. While it's not wrong and it's so beautiful and it's nice, when we compare it to Abigail, we're like, whoa, she's just in another level. She says, God is good. And only now do I realize that after so much suffering, He has reserved for me, in His infinite mercy, the greatest treasure of my life, your love, in the land of my ancestors. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would date Abby. Your love, so anoints all my thoughts. Heaven will make us happy. When we are married, I will pray fervently every morning to the angels of God to teach me how to weave a web of joy for you. At night, when the blessing of rest envelops the world, I will correspond with renewed affection. I will take your tormented mind off the problems of life, and I will anoint your head with the caresses of my hands. I will live with God and you alone. I will be faithful to you my whole life, and out of love for your life and your name, I will love any suffering the world may cause me. And I think here we see again this Abigail who is very, very rooted in God and in this spirituality. And she's seeing the divine of this relationship. She's seeing the potential that they both have to serve God. And it is just absolutely beautiful, right? So while, yes, she is enchanted by him, she's always mentioning this divine. Uh, and I think that we can learn so much, right, from this. There's another part where now Sao is kind of saying, okay, we shall live for each other and have children faithful to God. I shall be the ordering of our lives, and you shall be the obedience of our peace, right? And she's very she responds like this. Okay, we'll talk about this right now. You shall command and I shall obey. You shall be the order of my life, and I shall pray to God to help me be a balm of tenderness for you. When you're tired, I'll remember my mother, and I will put your kind soul to sleep with the most beautiful prayers of David. You shall interpret God's word for me. You shall be the law. I shall be your servant. Okay, so on the surface, I don't think that, I think as women, I'm gonna be a little opinionated. We have progressed. We don't talk like this anymore, right? But we can interpret it in our modern days of love or whatever, that she's very humble, that she wants to support Saul and be that partner for him. Well, I think that Sao is kind of just saying what she wants to hear. Let's have our children in God and let him, be obedient. Because let's not forget too that in Daniel's part, when they talked about that miracle that happened, he's gonna go and see, hey, what miracles is Stephen doing? He's going to go and research that, right? So we know that there's this little level of skepticism, not because in in this explanation, Emmanuel tells us that Sao does a lot of this for his mom's love. Okay, so he says here, Saul of Tarsus had experienced all the cravings of youthful impetuosity. He imagined situations of satisfied yearnings. However, obedient to his mother's love, he promised himself, right, he will never transgress. So yes, he was a good guy, right? But it was the mom that it was influencing. So, like, perhaps that in itself could hint to us too that he was very desperate, to say kind of like what Abigail wanted to hear. And he knows that she is very, very spiritual. Gosh, she's been mentioning God in their relationship this whole entire time. But this could also be in modern relationships, right? It doesn't mean it has to be with a man or a woman. It could be two males, two females, doesn't matter anymore. But these polarities, I think that we are learning from is for us to just invite ourselves, if we're in a relationship, to be like Abigail, to be more loving and try our best to incorporate this faith, and not say things, be genuine. Okay, I feel like Sao is still struggling with that. All right, so it says here that Abigail filled his heart, right? She was the mystic flower of his ideal, the soul who would understand his aspirations. And he just wished to draw closer and closer to her. And he felt like the butterflies in the stomach. He was just like, oh, Abigail, right? Which is really, really, really beautiful. But think about this. And this has happened to me too. Maybe I wish we were in a classroom because we could probably all open up. Sometimes when we love, we focus so much on the person without understanding that this person is not eternal. Again, I'm reading with the chapter, so I don't know what's the next chapter, but it's very interesting how he not once is really loving her as someone to come and compliment. He's just putting everything on her. And that could be, like Daniel said, a very controlling dynamic that could happen, right? Because we are all fluid. We are all here. One day we can go, some relationships stay, some relationships go. And so um, to be loving towards someone, but to be very, very careful, understanding that we are in this journey and it is very difficult. Like I said, friends, I'm not very romantic, obviously. Um, it says here, in Rapture with Spiritual Pleasure, they talked for a long time about love and everything that manifested, right? And then we have this interesting dialogue where he's again pushing, you know what, you're going to go to my house in 2 days. I'm going to return. Delilah's, my sister, she has everything ready. I already bought you these dresses. They're going to come and pick you up and we're going to get married. And Abigail was like, 6 months? Like, what? She didn't even have a say so. Um, and he's like, well, what's the problem? Right. And she's like, well, what about just Giselle, right? Or Stephen? He's my brother. I want him to be here. I want him to uh, understand this. And This is the way that he was described. Saul smiled slightly, okay? And he barely hid his disappointment. Do not worry about that. He says, first, let's just take care of my parents' approval, which is the most important thing. And there we go again, hinting to us about family. When I feel like when we are in a relationship, our family is important. And like Daniel said, she needed that support. Like, she's gone through this traumatic experience, and Sal was having a slight, I can say, difficulty supporting her. He was really more thinking about himself at this time. But we see the love again, where his love is about her and everything about her versus her seeing it the bigger picture in the long run. It says that Saul raised Abigail's hands to his lips and whispered the customary, faithful forever. So again, he's sealing the deal. But what's interesting here, before we open up for discussion, is that this chapter ends with the small chariot rolled along speedily under the moonlight in a cloud of dust. So again, we have these this idea of the moonlight, and even starting off here, we have nature being described to us, because this is like a love thing. But this cloud of dust, it's like foreshadowing, uh, even though it's moonlight and there's beautiful light, there's this blurriness that could come here, which could foreshadow to us some of the difficulties. And we know, right, that relationships, they are divine. They come together. Andre Luis talks a little bit about this. Even though we're, using the other literature, we know, like, I think in Love Goes On, everything in couples, they have like a purpose. So on one side, as a spiritist, you know, we understand that Abigail and Saul needed to come together, right? There's that um, thing. But on the other hand, too, learning from this as a human in this human experience and how we can be more spiritual in relationships, I think Emmanuel really gave us um, a love lesson. I'm gonna read this beautiful song, friends. Trying to be romantic here, because he does mention David, and that she would imagine herself reading to him Psalm 18s. And I can imagine us reading this in a relationship, reading the Bible or anything beautiful, because I think that's what Emmanuel wants us to remind us. Psalm 18 says, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my a rock in whom I take refuge. He is my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. And this beautiful song keeps going. Imagine ourselves rooted in this love for God and having a supportive partner. I think that that is absolutely beautiful. And I would love um, to be in this place. I know it was a tougher topic for me, because I'm I'm not so romantic, but I learned a lot. I don't know about you, Daniel and João.
You did beautiful. You did beautiful, beautiful. And I'm really happy that you guys are picking up this very interesting details about Sal's personality. Those will be very important in the future. Bro, do you wanna say something?
Yeah, I think the romantic one here is João. I feel that. Don't know why.
Who knows?
I just feel that.
I'm very optimistic, romantic, everything.
So
this
is my dear
this
friend.
this.
I'm joking. I love to joke.
Okay.
um,
Um. No, go ahead, bro. I make my considerations later.
just as you said earlier, I'm the married one here. I'd like to talk some of that. I'm not romantic, so I'm not talking about how beautiful the marriage is, how magical. That's not how. That's not my perspective over life. So we are talking about a couple that lived, let's say, it's nearly 20 centuries ago, and it's Middle East. So they had men and women had very clear roles in society, especially in marriage. The marriage was a great deal for society, for the economy, and they had all these rules about marriage. We have evolved in some points, like today we don't have these roles so hardly defined. Men and women are they we get together to let's say improve each other, to make a home and help each other to get to be better persons. That's what we expect from a well succeeded marriage. Um, but also we lost uh, some some important parts like these aspects like how can I say the marriage in the past were so stable, so the foundations were involved the society, involved religion, uh, deep deep concepts of everyone involved. But today we have the divorce as so much easier to have to accomplish, you know, and this is here and there when if you talk to a friend about some difficulty in marriage, you will hear that or you can divorce. It's so simple. You can split things and go uh, follow your way. And some things we lost, some things we evolved. I don't know if I was it was a bit longer than I wished, but this is what I wanted to bring.
No, bro, you were great.
Yeah.
And I do think that bringing those historical data, it's very important because we cannot be anachronical when it comes to looking back 20 centuries, as you pointed out. And maybe when we acknowledge that we are looking 2000 years ago to a man and he has this amount of love and he's talking like that about his future wife, maybe we can start to feel better about him because when we place those speeches in 2022, they really look very sexist. They are against everything that feminism brings us. So they of course they will not be very welcome. And so I think that bringing this historical perspective is really really important because we have seen, and Daniel is aware of that. I don't know if Nora has had that type of discussion there in the United States of America, but here in Brazil, um, uh, it's really common for us to hear that Kardec was full of prejudices, that he was a racist. So
Really?
bringing this, yes, it's
Is that
really normal
right?
here.
That memory?
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
wow.
it's really normal here. So bringing this perspective that we are talking about years and years and years ago, that these psychograph books, they're trying to be very honest about that time. It really changes everything and we can be more proportional and more just with the author. I have a couple of things to say, and as I've said before, okay, go ahead,
Just
dear.
real quick before, because you brought Kardec, and because
Yeah.
here I am using I to us here, Alan and Amelie, we still have this motto of women. They still need to be more, we're working on it. I feel like society as
Hmm.
a whole, from like Daniel and you brought up, right? But I still think that there's such a great example of already a relationship that is very sort of like independent. Like Amelie was the one that was actually supported
Yes.
her deck and stuff like that, right? So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Yes, yes, it's very important for us to bring all those perspectives because Spiritism is actually a very progressive
Yeah.
doctrine when it comes to overcoming all those racist thoughts. Because we do need to, and this is a very important issue, we do need to see and to be very clear about which are the doctrine principles and take them very apart from what Kardec or or anybody may have said as a man or a woman placed all those years in years ago. So we need to defer. Um, Now talking about a couple of things that you guys brought. So asking, I am not 100% sure if Daniel brought this or Nora when he was asking, "Do you love him?" Referring to Jazel, do you love him more than me? This is very, very interesting to see what type of man he was. Because a very important tone in his personality for us to notice is his pride. Because he's very, very attached to his pride. At this point of the book, we see Saul that he's having a really different perspective about these two men in his mind. Jazel, this Jewish saint, and Stephen, this evil, liking to fool people man. So he has this two different men in his mind. He is starting to love one and he hates the other one. And at the end of the day, and at this point of the book, we know that they are the same person. When Nora was reading, we see a very different point of view from Saul and Abigail. Saul very preoccupied about the qualities that Abigail had, but we feel that it was regarding tradition, it was regarding culture, society, and Judaism. And he was very preoccupied about all that stuff. On the other hand, we see Abigail thinking that they would make a good couple, and Nora brought us this. They would make a good couple in terms of working for God. So we see this huge difference when it comes to how they both saw that relationship, and we see a huge difference when it comes to acknowledging those spirits and how evolved they were. We see that Abigail was a really evolved spirit that in everything that she touched and in every single thought she had spirituality as the most high paradigm in her life. This is very nice because we're gonna see how it turns out. Another thing before I finish, um, we see that he was a just and honest man regarding, and I'm talking about Saul here. We see that he was very just and very honest regarding the law given to him. So we see here a huge amount of formalism. He was a formalist when it comes to how he read the law, but he was very honest. Above all, he wanted to protect that law. And this is as we and now we are not giving spoilers anymore because we have the Bible, but when we think about the transformation that Saul will go through, maybe that is why he was the chosen one. Because from this point of the book, when we see this huge amount of pride and selfishness, as Daniel brought us, he, in every single speech, trying to control her, we see that he is very honest and that he will fight to defend Judaism. And this is a very important thing for us to acknowledge. Do you guys want to say something before we finish?
Sorry, I'm like, go Abby. Go Abigail.
Yes, go Abby.
I think
Get free, break free from those ties.
I hammered Saul, but yes, of course, looking at the of course, the historical, we extract, I think, the metaphors that and make them current in our times. Right? We don't say I'm your servant, but of course, we want to be supportive, not just in relationship as a couple, but as a being in any relationship. We always want to try our best, right? To incorporate that Christ consciousness home, doing this, the God at homes, doing the prayers, and acknowledging all of that. So I didn't mean to hammer Saul, but I did favor. I have to say I was a little biased. I did favor Abigail. It's just but guys, I'm romantic. It was a joke. Okay, I gotta say it was a very interesting study to do. I have to say it was very interesting because we wouldn't think spiritism, would talk about love, but it is important to talk about love, relationships, and stuff. So I learned a lot. Thanks, friends.
Bro, do you want to say something before we finish?
Oh yes, about what you said in Brazil, what's going on? The prejudices linked to Allan Kardec. Well, there's this hunt for bigotry that is fashion today, and this will of let's say, to fight bigotry is so intense that people are forgetting that uh, Allan Kardec lived 160 years ago, and this is the world he lived. He was educated and he grew up in that society when things that are uh, so despiteful to us were normal to them at that time. We're just regular. We're the law, you know. And he, for instance, when he talks about slavery, there was slaves at that time. It was law, and nobody was being inhuman or being cruel. It was the rule, and he stood up and talked about slavery, slavery in his books. So I'd like just to point that out. We have to consider, as usual, well said, we have to consider the years that these people in the books were living and how society was. And we actually have to feel good about it because we now uh, think this is bad and we don't accept it anymore. So this is evolving. This is progress. We've made progress. We have to be happy about it and not try to fight someone who lived in the past and gave this wonderful work and brought us this doctrine so wonderful that is changing lives around the world, especially in Brazil.
Yes, beautiful.
Thank you,
And
guys.
yes, that thing that Daniel brought us is very, very true because we could spend the whole night here talking about upheavals that Spiritism brought, and we are talking about loads and loads of years ago. So it was a very progressive movement and doctrine. A very important thing for me here to say when we're talking about um, acknowledging and recognizing and considering the differences between times and how unfair it would be to look back with the mentality that we have today, we need to think that reasonableness, and I mean reasonableness linked to this proportionality meaning, this is a Christian principle. When we look back to the gospel and we see Jesus Christ talking about that widow that gave more than all those Pharisees because she gave everything that she had. In that parable, Jesus, he is telling us that we need to be proportional. We can look to different situations and use the same type of measuring. We need to be proportional. And this is a Christian principle. So we need to acknowledge that. I'm very happy for being here with you guys. Very happy learning a lot with you guys. We have reached our time here, so we can go further. I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I think everybody that is here with us so far. I think everybody that is watching the releases that are coming later. Thank you guys so much. I see you guys next week. Do you guys want to say something quick before we start? We finish.
I just wanted to say thank you and learning a lot. And, the way um, we spread goodness and progressive ideas is by sharing them, by,
Yes.
um, reading and studying and
Yes.
bringing them up. And I think for being a book that was written a while back with a historical context, I think Emmanuel was really, he really is counting on us to get this and not take it to that level. It's not about discussing in a negative way. Every time we have discussions, it's always to learn, to grow, grasp ideas from one another, but always to stay true to the references, and and to always get whatever feels right for us, and whatever is still not in our alignment, that's okay, because it wasn't meant for us. So even what I did not know that was going on with Alon Kardec and stuff. Wow. um it's definitely very interesting. We just gotta choose our battles and spread the good news. So yeah, very nice.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Very nice.
yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
friends.
yes,
Thanks,
I
thanks.
see you guys next Saturday. Okay. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.